All right, welcome to the Let's Shove cooking channel. Today we're going to be making barbecue sauce because we're going to have some leftover pulled pork sandwiches for dinner. So, looks like a lot of ingredients. It is, but trust me, it's all pretty much necessary to get the right flavor. So what we're going to start off with, 1/3 cup of brown sugar. We use golden brown sugar. We have 1/4 cup of molasses. That goes in there. Gets most of that going. We'll get the rest out once we get the rest of the liquid in there and get it heated up. We have 1.5 cups of whiskey. You can just use cheap whiskey. No one's paying me, so I'm not going to promote their brand. But it was inexpensive at the liquor store. I think it was $6 for a pint. Okay, 1.5 cups of that. We're just going to kind of stir this up before we put any heat on it. Get the molasses off the bottom so it doesn't burn. While we're waiting for this to come up to temperature. Alright. And the alcohol is going to help dissolve that sticky molasses. So, we got that going. You could use other liquids. If you wanted to just use water, you could do that. There's plenty of spices and seasonings in here, but we want that flavor in the barbecue sauce from that whiskey. That's why we're putting it in there. But if we got our Mormon friends or anybody who doesn't want alcohol in their house or in their food, maybe you're the preacher, you don't want to see somebody from the congregation watch you sneak out of the supermarket with a bottle of whiskey, by all means you can use apple juice. Like I said, you could use water. You could use whatever you want. Hey, if you don't want to use molasses, you could replace that with honey. This is a really flexible base sauce. It's just about the flavors from the ingredients coming together to make the sauce that you want. Alright, then what we're going to do is we need 1/3 cup of apple cider vinegar. Super important ingredient in here. We're just going to get all these, like I said, all these mixed up together before we put the heat on. Alright. I can feel now there's no more sticky bits on the bottom of the pan from that molasses, so we're going to turn the heat on. And I'm going to put this on just a medium heat. Alright, now before we go and dump the tomato paste in, we're going to add the dry ingredients so that they get a chance to hit the alcohol before it cooks off and they get to reabsorb liquid, and it helps the flavors blend together a lot better. So here we go. Here's the recipe. Pretty basic measurements. We have 1 teaspoon. Oh, I'm sorry. Woo, that would have been salty. We get 1 teaspoon of onion powder. Alright, we get 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. Alright, and then all the other ingredients we're going to do are 1/2 teaspoon. Alright, so we get 1/2 teaspoon of salt. That's more like it. Salty barbecue sauce does not taste good. No matter what you do to it, it's ruined. You got to start over. Alright, we get 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. 1/2 teaspoon of paprika. 1/2 teaspoon of New Mexico chili powder. Now you can substitute that New Mexico chili powder. It's really not that spicy. It does have some good heat. Now the next ingredient is optional, the cayenne pepper, but we like it spicy here. Now if you like it extra spicy, you could use 1.5 teaspoons of cayenne pepper and forego the other 2, or you could just use all paprika, or you could probably just omit it altogether. I've never made it without it. I always put the cayenne in because I love the flavor. So here we go, with 1/2 teaspoon of that. Maybe a little bit more. We always like the heat. Alright, we need 1/2 teaspoon of ground mustard. And then we need, whoop, that is not the lid. Then we need 1/2 teaspoon of celery salt. Seems like everything but the kitchen sink, but it's really not. A lot of ingredients, but the flavors all blend together so well. Just tastes great. Now for a little bit of that secret ingredient. There's always a little something in everybody's sauce that they want you to wonder, what's that flavor? I like to put cloves in mine, and I don't use a lot. About 1/8 of a teaspoon is all you need for this recipe. I'm using this one here. It says a pinch. You can see it's just a small amount. That goes in there. You put too much cloves in there, you're gonna wreck it. Because then everything starts to taste like clove, and it'll make your mouth go numb. Dropping stuff like crazy. All right. So now let's whisk this together. Here you can see we got the edge starting to get a little simmery going right here. Make sure you get that mustard powder ground up in there. It does not like to dissolve until it gets hot, but that's all right. Here we go. Next liquid ingredients that we're gonna do. We get a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. All right, and we're gonna drop in a teaspoon of soy sauce. All right. Let's give this a stir, and then we're gonna open up that tomato paste and come right back to you and show you how we finish this barbecue sauce. All right. All right, so we're back. This has been simmering now for about 5 minutes. Got my little mess over here cleaned up and everything put back away. So just kind of stirring this up now, letting it simmer. I turned the heat down to low. Now we're gonna get the rest of that molasses out of the measuring cup. You don't want that to go to waste. Best way to do it, just get it nice and warm. And here, swirl it around. Next thing you know, all your molasses is in there. Like I said, you can riff on this recipe. If you don't want the molasses in there, you could use cane syrup. If you don't want the cane syrup in there, you could use honey. If you don't want the honey in there, you could use agave syrup. You can just pick what you want. It's great. But the base of the entire flavor is that brown sugar, the whiskey, and the spices. All right, so now we're gonna add in the tomato paste. And the tomato paste is gonna bloom and make the sauce really thick. So if this sauce comes out a little too thick for your taste, you can just add water back to it. The other thing we've done with this is we didn't realize that we were out of tomato paste and had to use about 1.5 cups of ketchup. We just cooked it a little longer to make it as thick as we wanted it to be. The other thing though is if you're gonna have to add something in here like ketchup, because you're out of tomato paste or you don't have any, make sure that you don't add the salt in because ketchup is already salted well. Wait till you make the whole rest of this recipe and cook it down and then taste it and see if you need to add any salt, because like I said before, salty barbecue sauce is not good barbecue sauce. All right, so we've got this now mixed in here. We're gonna let that start to come back up to a simmer. And just as it starts to get back to that simmer, we're gonna add in some liquid smoke. Now I don't always add in liquid smoke because normally I'm smoking outside on my big smoker or on my Weber kettle, and the barbecue sauce is gonna pick up that smoky flavor just from being on the grill and touching the meat that's been smoked. But tonight we're doing leftover pulled pork. That smokiness isn't all the way through the meat. We just want to add a little touch of that to this because when we heat it up, we're going to do it in a saucepan. We're going to add some barbecue sauce in with it as the meat heats back up. So you can see here, the color on this is just fantastic. That's what we're looking for right there. Now this needs to simmer for about 20 minutes on low and keep it stirring. That way it doesn't scald or scorch on the bottom, especially if your burner is a little bit bigger than the one that I have. All right, so we're gonna let this simmer out for about 20 minutes and we'll be right back to show you what it looks like when it's done. All right, welcome back to the barbecue sauce adventure that we're having here. As you can see, it's been just over 20 minutes. Really starting to thicken up well. The color is amazing. And now we're gonna add in the liquid smoke. I always kind of put it in at the end. That way if it's a little strong, the whole house isn't liquid smoked for too long. But I'm going to use a half a teaspoon. It might seem like a lot. I used a 1/4 teaspoon last time. Just didn't seem like it was enough. So it gets a half this time. Alright. And like I said, you can omit that. If you're going to be using this on some smoked meat, basting it on ribs, making pulled pork right off the smoker, you really don't need it. Everything's already going to be smoky enough for you. But we're just adding it in there just a little bit extra. Alright, and this sauce is pretty much done. We're going to let that steam here for another minute or so, and we'll be at our deadline of about 30 minutes simmer time for this. And then you can let it cool down completely, serve it the same day. You can put it in the fridge, serve it the next day. Stays good for about 10 days to 2 weeks depending. So there you go. That's it. That's the recipe. Stick around. We're about ready to make some leftover pulled pork sandwiches. I'm going to show you how I do that, and then we're going to eat. Alright, so now this barbecue sauce is totally finished. It was still a little bit thin, so I heated it back up for another 5 or 6 minutes just till I could get that. See how it just stops cold when you're stirring? You don't want it to keep going. Now it's a lot thicker, even just 4 or 5 minutes. Maybe it was 6 minutes. But that's what it came out like. So I tasted it, my daughter tasted it. This is my recipe. I've been making this barbecue sauce for about 23 years, and this is the best that it's ever tasted because we switched brands of tomato paste. So I'm going to have to do a review on that tomato paste product and hope that you can find it where you live. This is the Let's Shove cooking channel, and we appreciate you tuning in. If you like the videos, hit the like button. You can always subscribe. We're going to have almost daily content for the next couple of months, because we have piles of recipes and we cook at home every day.